in the gospel or in the readings today, there's a short little refrain that's sung during the Alleluia. It's the gospel verse. We sometimes pass over it without giving it much thought. It said this. It's from Philippians 2. Shine like lights in the world as you hold on to the word of life. That caused me to do a lot of thinking, especially in light of what's happening with our church now with the synod that's been taking place. I follow Father Robert Barron a lot. I think he's probably one of the best or most articulate theologians in the church today. And he was reminding us about the Second Vatican Council, which is so crucial. So I want to talk a little bit about this, maybe help us understand our synod a little better. When St. John the 23rd, Pope John the 23rd, called the council in 1962, he was doing something really important. He likened it to Noah's Ark. That is, that the church had been moving through time, especially since the Council of Trent in the 1600s, and so much had changed in the world with the Enlightenment and rationalism and modernism, that the church, like Noah's Ark, had perhaps tended to put its life inside the boat and close up the doors because it's stormy outside. And what John the 23rd envisioned was this, that the council was meant not to modernize the church, but to Christify the world. His vision was not to necessarily modernize the church, but to Christify the world. That means that take those doors of Noah's Ark, open them, and send life streaming back into the world, from the church into the world. So there might be some things that need to be changed within the life of the church, but the intention was more so to get Christ out there. And one of the first and major documents of the council is the Constitution on the very identity of the church, called Lumen Gentium, which means light to the nations. That the Council Fathers said that the very identity of the church is this: Christ is the light of the world, and the church is the bearer of that light to the world. If Christ is the light of the world, then the church is the vessel through which that light shines to the world. Right? And what John the 23rd and the subsequent Paul the 6th and the Council Fathers tried to do with those council documents is, let's think deeply about how we can Christify the world, which is rapidly rejecting God. It's a great thing. It's a great idea. It's a real powerful thought. Father Barron talks about then what's happened since the council. And he asks the question, have we done that? Has the church been Christifying the world? It's just a good question to ask. Subsequent synods are ways to do follow-up conversations from the Second Vatican Council. Are we getting this done? And then Father Barron makes a comment on a way in which we can relate to the council and have it really affect our lives. I think this is pretty important for us. He says that some major players in the council, this is like a history lesson for you all, by the way, in case you haven't heard this before. Some of the major theologians at the council, some really young bucks that were there at the time, were guys like Karl Rahner, Henri de Lubac, Joseph Ratzinger, right? These were the great progressive theologians of the day that were really a part of, let's move forward so we can bring Christ to the world. Joseph Ratzinger became Pope Benedict, by the way, the 16th. And he was very instrumental in writing these documents. Ratzinger was at all 4 of the working sessions of the council and all of its subsequent synods. But after the council, these young theologians got together and they wanted to continue the spirit of the council, so they formed a journal called Concilium, or Concilio, which means council. And this journal was trying to keep that spirit of the council alive. But not long after that, Joseph Ratzinger, who was with de Lubac and Rahner and others, he broke away from them and said, I don't think this is the direction we're supposed to be going. And he received a lot of criticism for that. And he started a new journal called Communio, which means communion. And Joseph Ratzinger's contention was that the church never intends that the spirit of a council is supposed to continue. And here's what he means by that. Throughout history, 20 times the church has gathered in a major council, like Nicaea, Chalcedon, Trent, Vatican. And when they gather, the concilium, they debate. There's a pressing question, pressing issues. Is Jesus fully human? Is he fully divine? What's the answer? The church is not sure. The people aren't sure. There's questions, and the church debates. That's the concilium, raising questions. Do we need to change our ideas on something? That's what a council does. But then at the end of the council fathers summarize that through documents, and they bring the issues to a resolve. And then offer that to the church and say, now it's time for us to take a deep breath. We've resolved it. Now let's live it. That's called communio, or communion. Now we can be in communion together as we live this. So take Nicaea, for example. Back in the 4th century, there was great dissension and heresy in the church about the identity of Jesus. And the church gathered, and in the end, they produced a document called the Nicene Creed. This is who Jesus is. Now we can relax and stop arguing about it. We've got it. Let's live it. And the church didn't keep going on arguing about it. It lived it. So what Ratzinger is saying is that the Vatican Council ended and the documents came out. So let's live them instead of continuing to argue about them. That the spirit of concilium, what he said, is that constant questioning, he says, that's not what we've ever done in our history. When the council ends, we go, we receive the documents and we live them together. His contention with the Diurnal Concilia was they're wanting to keep the debate going, and if you do that, we begin to question our fundamental identity and we begin to lose sense of who we are. If all we do is question, then we lose a sense of who we are. And Father Robert Barron says, as I reflect back on the decades right after the council, there's a sense of, well, who are we as a church? We've kind of stumbled a little bit. And as we're constantly questioning, it's hard for us then to bring Christ to the world because we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. And if we look around, we go, are we Christifying the world? All Catholic missionary efforts have basically ended since the council. The great missionaries now are not Catholics. So the call for us then is to be a people of communio and to take what we've been given and live it. So here's the call that I want to offer all of us. Is let's take that deep breath. Okay. The church herself has means to deal with the issues, and she's doing that. And when she gives us the answer, then we don't have to necessarily keep on questioning it. Let's live it. So like the documents of the council, read them, please. They're wonderful. They'll change the world. They'll change the world. But we seem to those are documents, but I just want to keep debating though, no, just try it. Just live them. And when there needs to be more clarification, there's been synods, and every time the church offers another exhortation or a document, it's a way to help answer clarification. So like Pope Francis last year said, you know what, the way we're going to do this is through joy. If we're going to crucify the world, he said in his exhortation, we need to regain that sense of Christian joy. And he said, we need to be missionaries again. If you read his exhortation last year, it's incredible. He says, we have to pick up the call of the council to crucify the world, but the way we're going to do it fundamentally is by living a joyful life in the world and have people go, man, who are you? To just stand out there in the street corner and say, this is our doctrine and you're doing this wrong and you're doing this wrong is probably not going to get a lot of converts. First and foremost, they're going to look at you and go, wow, there is something about you that is deep and profound. Can you tell me about that and tell me why? I think about my family growing up. Every once in a while, we'd have to have a family meeting, mostly because us kids were just getting a little too out of hand. Life at home was getting a little crazy. Mom and Dad would say, time out, we're calling a synod. Right? Time out, family meeting. And we would get together and we would have to raise issues and discuss things and debate things like who's going to wash the dishes or not. And what's the protocol to make sure that we develop lists to keep in charge of who's washing dishes. Every night it was, no, it's your turn. No, it's your turn. No, it's your time out, synod. We're going to resolve this. And then after the family meeting happened, the debate was over. And we lived it. If we continued as a family to constantly have family meetings every day of our lives, it would be hard to have a family. At some point you have to say, we've decided this. Now we're going to live it and put it into action. We might have to revisit things every once in a while, but we're not going to just constantly live in the sense of, let's every day reevaluate our family life. Let's constantly push the limits of what we could be as a family. Well, good luck if you want to try to do that. At some point you got to say, this is it. It's time for the family to live in communion together. And that's what we are being asked to do now, is to take the council of the Vatican Council of 1962-65 and live that with the help of the documents that have come since then. So if you're looking for some good homework and some way to change your life, delve into those. They'll rock your world. They'll change the world. But who wants that, right? So anyway, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Right? There's things that we have control of, and there's things that we don't. Jesus wasn't too interested in running a whole political regime. He wanted to build the kingdom of God. He wasn't going to delve in things that didn't belong to him necessarily. Not that he didn't care. That wasn't his purpose. And you and I also, let's give to God what belongs to God. Let's live our family life together. It's beautiful.